we eliminate a lot of that struggle. So as soon as we implement some variability, we're...
Shit, sorry.
It's all good. You had to come back in, sorry.
I just, yeah.
There's your intro.
What's up? Welcome back to the TCP Podcast. This is Leclerc, and I'm in Lowell, Mass, with my guy Tyler Leclerc.
Yes, sir.
And this will be episode 5. So I'll open up the floor real quick. Tyler, you want to give a little background information for the people?
Yeah, so like you said, my name is Tyler Leclerc. I have a gym out in Lowell, Mass, so I kind of run my player development training out in this way. So I train athletes at all different levels, middle school, high school, college, pro. So yeah, I've been doing it for about 5 years now. Started kind of training right after high school, went to college for a year, started training a little bit there as I was trying to play, and then just decided I wanted to go full-time with it. So I went all in, dropped out of school, decided I want to be a trainer, this is what I want to do, and just completely dedicated my life to that ever since. So now we're here.
Yes, sir. So you grew up in Mass, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you feel like living in Mass has any sort of reflection on your training style today and who you are as a person?
I wouldn't say so, just because, I mean, I didn't really grow up, like, training with other people, so, like, in terms of the training style or play style, I feel like, and who I am as a person, I don't know, maybe it does, but I feel like from my perspective, I can't tell. So maybe from outside looking in, yes, but...
Yeah, I just remember always coming to Mass as a player, like, players were hella chippy.
Yeah.
Like to be up in your shorts on defense. So I don't know if that would reflect on your training style in that way.
Yeah.
But all right. With that being said, do you want to talk about your training style, some big rocks and pillars within your training, and kind of how you do things at TJL?
Yeah. So I'd say my training style has definitely evolved a lot, which it should as you continue to grow as a trainer. So I've tried a lot of different things. Like, I've seen a lot of different trainers ever since I was a player myself on social media, and kind of tried what they did, and then it's helped me find my own style of training. I'd say the main premise of my training is a lot of like games-based approach stuff, at least in group style, and a lot of deliberate practice stuff in terms of the individual, but mainly it's just like rooted in the science, like what actually works, like not just trying to guess, do what I've seen other trainers do, but know why I'm doing everything that I do. So in terms of the group training, it's a lot of games-based approach. It's a lot of perception, action, and just trying to make it as game-like, quote-unquote, as it can possibly be, including all the elements of the game. Like I said, the perception, action, the pressure that players feel, the mental aspect. So I'd say that's pretty much my style of training, is just as game-like as possible.
For sure. And as you know, I subscribe to a lot of that kind of stuff, and that's what I'm developing in my philosophies as well. But for people that don't necessarily know, do you want to describe what a games-based and constraints-led approach is?
So the games-based approach is really just, it's kind of self-explanatory, but not. It's just, especially in a group setting, is making everything like everything is in a game style. So a lot of small-sided games. At least in my training, there's a lot of competitive stuff. So it's a lot of just playing against real defenders. So it's not, all right, we have a group, we're training on air, and we're just going through the motions. It's, all right, I'm on offense, someone's on defense, they're actually trying to play defense. There's certain constraints that might be in place. So you can combine the games-based approach and the constraints-led approach. And the constraints is really just putting essentially a rule in place that's going to lead players to their own discovery in a way. So like, say I'm going through a drill, maybe it's a 2-on-2 drill, and I implement a certain constraint, I can lead a player to their own answer without me having to tell them what I want them to work on. So the games-based approach, we're able to get a lot of implicit learning, where I'm not doing the teaching, the game's kind of doing some of the teaching, but I'm just more guiding them. So that's really why I love the games-based approach, just the ability to get that implicit learning, play against real defenders, feel that game pressure, as opposed to trying to just go through the motions on air and then, okay, now let's try to transfer it later down the road. It's kind of combining the skill and the transfer aspect all into one roof.
So big word with implicit. Do you want to talk about why, like, what is the benefit of implicit and kind of the factor that implicit learning plays through the games-based approach?
So implicit learning in the first place is just learning without consciously knowing what you're learning. So if I was to teach someone something and explain every detail, that's kind of the explicit learning. And then implicit learning is them learning on their own. So if you're a kid growing up, A lot of the things that you learn are implicit. Like, if someone can tell you, don't touch the stove 1,000,000 times. But once you actually touch the stove yourself, you realize, oh shit, that's hot. Like, that's you learning on your own. And you're able to just learn quicker this way. Like, you don't have to go through the whole conscious process and then try to get into the unconscious. You learn it quicker and it sticks longer because you learned it on your own, as opposed to, like, we all kind of know this intuitively. Like, someone tells you something 1,000,000 times and then you finally experience it or do it on your own. You're like, oh shit, like, that works. That's pretty smart. I've heard people tell me this 1,000,000 times. I should do this. You should do this. But once you do it on your own, it just sticks better. You remember it longer and it just translates way easier.
For sure. I think it was a podcast I was listening to recently. I heard a super good analogy. It was like referencing like a car, right? Driving. So when you're between the ages of 5 to 16, you're in the car watching your parents drive the car.
Yeah.
And like when you're 16, okay, I'm getting my license. I can actually finally drive. You would think, since you're observing and watching, you would understand how to drive. But as soon as you actually get behind the wheel, you press on the gas, you're like, oh my, like, I don't know what I'm doing. It's completely different. So implicitly, unaware of what you're learning, unconsciously you're learning, and that's what sticks more. And I was thinking to myself on the car right here about these questions, and explicitly, you've talked about this a lot too. When we teach so explicitly, we constantly give our players the solutions. So you want to talk about that a little bit and why that has a negative trickling effect on our players?
Yeah. So I'd say one thing that I noticed in terms of that, like in my training, is when I train a player for like the first time and they've worked with other trainers, because they're so used to that explicit learning, the second they don't figure something out or the second they can't do something, they just immediately look at me. Like, I'm going to provide the answer for them, and they get so uncomfortable because I'm not going to give you the answer right away. Like, you got to figure it out. And it's the same thing. Like, a player steps into the game, you always giving them the answers. The second they get to a point where they're struggling, they look to the coach or they look to their parent for the answer, and it's like they don't have that answer for you. You're in a game, you got to be able to figure it out for yourself. So it's like we can either help the player or hurt the player in this regard when it comes to training. Like, if we're not going to give them the answer, we're going to help them become problem solvers. They got to figure things out for themselves. They get to a point in a game where they're struggling, fourth quarter, they don't know what to do. They're just adaptable. They know how to figure things out and just kind of be on their own in a way. Like, when we're constantly giving them the answers to their problems, it just, we're not building independent learners. So, like, the best analogy that I have and like that I love for this is like, if you're trying to build muscle in the gym, right? The second that rep gets hard, you just drop the weight or someone takes the weight off you. You're not going to really get strong because you're not struggling. So it's like, it's the same thing with learning. Like, when a player gets to a point where they start to struggle, that's where the learning starts to happen. So if we're giving them the answers, we're actually taking away their opportunity to learn. Same thing in as a student or a teacher, like, you're in math class, the second you don't know a problem, if the teacher comes over and gives you the answer, you're never going to learn. Once you get to the math test, you're like, oh shit, like, I don't know how to do any of this. Like, I never had to actually learn, I just always got the answer. Now when you don't get the answer, you're screwed. So it's like, it's kind of the same thing, and those are like my favorite analogies just because it makes sense in that regard, but we never think about it in terms of being on a basketball court. Like, players struggling, oh, do this instead. Boom, okay, cool. It sounds good, you're helping the player in the moment, but again, you're taking away the opportunity to learn, and that's where the player gets better.
Yeah, and I'll talk about this in other episodes and stuff, but it's kind of like this, we have to know and differentiate what the goals are. Obviously in training, like, are we going for learning and results and progress, or are we going for performance? And that's when you can differentiate the two, of course. But when we teach explicitly, like shooting form, for example, like having a square base, quote unquote, or like landing balance the entire time, we kind of set up our players for failure, because if that player doesn't land perfectly in a game in that balanced position, now they're thinking about that. So on the next play, they're not thinking about defense, they get caught lacking on defense, now they're out of the game, now they're not even playing the game. It's like, I might be reaching there, but those are the things that I think about. So if we're teaching like explicitly, we're just making them so dependent on, like you said, a trainer or a coach. So we just can't constantly give these players solutions. Like you said, there needs to be challenge present in order to constantly adapt. Yeah, and that also causes them to, like you said, like overthink, overanalyze. Oh, I'm supposed to be doing this, and it's just like the player's not in the moment. They're thinking too consciously, and when we think too consciously, that's when we actually interrupt the unconscious movement pattern, which is what we should be operating on in the game. Yeah, for sure. So with that, like, implicitly, I feel like every single player will look differently, of course. You talk a lot about the optimal zone of improvement. So you want to talk about exactly what that is for you?
Yeah. So optimal zone of improvement is really just being in the right zone of challenge. So it's like it's not too easy, it's not too hard. So that's where kind of like the implicit, or even just giving players the answers, is key, because if we're giving them the answers, we're taking them out of that optimal zone of improvement. We're taking the challenge away. Like there needs to be some challenge there if they're going to improve. So the best spot to be in is it's not too easy and it's not too hard. We're right in the middle. And we're just allowing them to mess up sometimes. We're correcting them sometimes, but they're still struggling, and then that's where the most optimal improvement is going to come from.
Yeah, so I'm sure a lot of people will have this question. Whenever you work with a majority of levels or different athletes in general, how do you differentiate the optimal zone of improvement for different players?
So I'd say it's like whatever it is that we're doing, it's finding that percentage of success rate. So in some books they say like 70%, but that's kind of flawed with basketball because basketball is naturally a flawed sport. So it's like we're not going to get 100%. So it's like if they're succeeding 50% of the time, that's probably like a good zone to be in. It all depends what we're working on, what skill we're working on. But just they're messing up and then they're succeeding. But it's not like they're getting 9 reps good and 1 rep bad. That's probably too easy. So it's like, all right, if they're getting 40% of the reps right, whether it's footwork or learning a new skill, that's probably the space to be in. And obviously every player's skill set's differently. So one player might be able to do something really well and I need to implement more constraints to get the right amount of challenge. And I might be working with a 4th grader who I can just literally just make one small change and I get him in that zone. So it's just all dependent, but I think finding the right percentage of success to failure ratio.
For sure, and I think it'll be obviously subjective to every athlete. And I was reading a study it was called like, the title was 85-15%, 85 to 15% rule. And it was like 85% of the time you want to succeed, whereas 15% of the time you want to fail.
Yeah.
And I mean, in the study they were talking about, you can be 20% failing, 25, depending on what you're working on, like you said. But I do think, depending on the sport, depending on what skill you're working on, it'll look way different.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, because like the optimal zone of improvement is so subjective. So I think it comes down to like how you if you know your athletes, the kind of environment, the culture that you breed, and that kind of gets me to another question. With the optimal zone of improvement, obviously you're going to fail a lot with an implicit learning kind of technique. How do you breed a culture that embraces kind of training ugly, so to speak, and failing, but also like they're aware that this is how I improve?
Yeah.
How do you breed that kind of culture?
I think the first step is, as a coach, being okay with that happening. So like you see a lot of coaches, they'll be like, I don't want you to mess up at all. Like you lose the ball, that's bad. So I think the first step is just getting them to understand, like, hey, you mess up, totally fine. Like, your body language can show that. Like, they lose the ball and you're just pissed off. It's like, in their mind, they're like, okay, mess up's not good. So how you're coming about it, body language-wise, how you're presenting yourself, how you're correcting, hey, you messed up, no problem. Like, that's supposed to happen. So I think the first step is the psychological safety aspect, so they can see and feel that it's okay to mess up. And then the second part's really just, like, communicating that with them. Like, you're supposed to mess up. Like, we're not here, like you said, the performance versus learning. We're not here for you to perform perfectly in a workout. We're here for you to get better. And to get better, you have to mess up. And then sometimes, like, when they mess up, I'm clapping. I'm like, hey, that's good. We're making progress. Like, you should be struggling if you want to get better. So once they understand that that's okay, then they get a little more comfortable. But, yeah, I think it's the psychological safety part. And just communicating why it's so important that you should be messing up. Like, that's how we're going to get better. It's necessary. It's not optional. It's necessary. So I think just communicating, that's a big step.
For sure. Communication is huge. And on the episode with Cole, I was telling him, like, over the winter break, I started working with the college that I went to. And, like, every single time I would see a new player, which a lot of them know me anyways, but anytime I would see them, I would be like, start of the workout, I'd be like, guys, you're going to mess up a lot. But that's how we're supposed to get better. Yeah. And that's how I enjoy training, and that's how I believe you guys will get results. So I think, like you said, communicating at the beginning, whether it's like, I have this new client and I'm going to be with them for the long run, or it's just one session. Yeah. You're going to mess up. So be mentally prepared for that. But also, like, this is a safe environment. Like you said, psychologically safe. So I think that's huge. Yeah. I think a lot of coaches, and they don't realize it, but, like, a lot of coaches just don't realize that aspect. Like, it's just natural. Like, you get into a workout, you want your players to do well, so you want to push them to get everything right. But it's just not how. Like you said, we need to establish the goals. Are we here to perform, or are we here to learn? It's like, once you establish that, then you got to be aware as a coach of how you're coming off to these players in terms of improvement. Like, if they're messing up and you're criticizing them or making them run,
they're not going to want to mess up. They're not going to push themselves. They're not going to get better.
Yeah, and we could talk about like quote unquote punishments, like punishing your players with some sort of physical task is like proven not to be very valuable. You know what I mean? Yeah. So we don't have to talk about that right now, but that's like an interesting topic in itself. But a little while back, you posted a reel talking about rules in a session of practice. Yeah. So do you want to talk about rules, your thoughts on rules, and like just dive into that a little bit?
Yeah. So what I was like mainly getting at in the post was just like, in basketball is not like a black and white sport. Like, it's not like always do this or always do that. Like, it's a very imperfect game, and a lot of what happens is operating in the gray area. So it's like, you see it all the time. Coaches, jump off your left foot if you're finishing with the right hand. If you're on the right side, finish with your right hand. It's like we're implementing these rules, even if that may be beneficial for them at this age. Like, hey, just try to get off your left foot. But we're implementing the rules so players think something's right and something's wrong. So it's like we get into a game and we're just naturally avoiding that movement because we've been taught that it's wrong. And it's like there's too many aspects that in a game to say one thing's right or one thing's wrong, because most of the time what's wrong is going to happen in a game. But if we're not preparing our players for that, we're kind of underperforming as a trainer. Like, you see it all the time, like, okay, work on going 1-2 into your shot. And if they go, instead of going right-left, they go left-right. They're like, oh, that's wrong. Like, it's not wrong. It happens all the time in game, and sometimes that's the best possible solution. So it's like we're just basically putting everything into a box, and it's like that's just not how the game operates. So I think just, again, like sometimes you want to teach a player a certain thing, like, oh, jump off your left foot, finish with your right hand. I get that. And if they do it the other way, don't be like, that's wrong. Just be like, hey, there's a time and place for that, but right now I want you to work on this. So it's just trying to stay away from that's right, that's wrong, do that, don't do this, do this, and just trying to stay away from the black and white, understanding the game's like operating in that gray area.
For sure, and I feel like whenever you get into that space and that mindset of identifying things as right or wrong, that just gives your players, that allows them to kind of think like, okay, if I'm doing this, it's wrong. So like it has a very negative connotation to that entire thing.
Exactly.
So that footwork is wrong.
Yeah.
Which then correlates to my shot is wrong. It's nothing's wrong or right. It's just, like you said, everything has a time and place.
Exactly.
But we talked about like a constraints-led approach. So what is the difference, do you think, between a constraint and a rule within a training session?
So I think, like I was saying in the beginning, like a constraint's more to guide a player to a certain solution. So say I want to teach a player to jump off, go same foot, same hand. So they're jumping off the right foot, finishing with the right hand. I'll be like, you got to finish, or I can put, say we're in the games-based approach, I can put a player on the opposite block, they start on the opposite elbow, and just be like, go and finish. So like that can be a constraint, and I'm trying to guide them to a certain answer, but I'm not giving them the answer where like, this is right, this is not right, this is right. Like, you can do whatever you want, but you're going to figure out, because of that constraint, what's a better option. So it's like, say, again, another example, like we want to work on that inside-outside going into a pull-up. I'm going to create a solution or a constraint where that's the best possible solution for that problem. Instead of being, don't do this or do this, I'm putting a constraint where it's like, all right, they're going to over time figure out this is probably the best solution for this time and place. So it's like not implementing the rule, but them also being able to understand like there's a time and place for everything. So it's like in this time and place, this is the best possible solution. I can create another constraint which gives them the opposite, right? Where the outside foot, inside foot's a better footwork for that time and place. So I think that's the main difference is like with the constraint, there's no right or wrong, there's just a better answer. And that's how the game operates. There's no right or wrong. There's just one answer seems to be better than another for that time and place. Versus a rule, it's like it's always right or always wrong.
Yeah, and I think it all comes back together because we could talk about implicit learning there too. Because if people want to go onto your Instagram and see it too, you post a lot about it. Like the implicit aspect. If you want to identify, but if you want to hone in on a single skill, but you don't want to explicitly tell them, hey, it's going to be a rocker step or it's going to be a crossover. Audio cues, verbal cues, even if you're in front of them, whatever, you can implicitly help teach them how to do like a crossover. So with the games-based approach, your constraint may be maybe you have to go to the left, but like you have to figure out different options. It can't be a crossover right to left every time. It has to be between the legs, spin, whatever it is. So what's also cool is like the small-sided games, all that kind of thing is it's more of a broad spectrum, I feel like. With small-sided games, like you said, it's not one shoe fits all. Like it's not a 2-foot floater every time. it might be a 1 foot floater, it might be a reverse layup, whatever. You're giving them a small sided game, a bigger, like I said, spectrum, or like a bigger scale.
Yeah.
So now they can kind of expand their horizons and like figure out what works best in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
They see help side coming over, they go up and under, it's a layup. It doesn't have to be one move, black and white. Like you said, it's all gray.
Yeah.
So why don't we dive into this a little bit too? We've kind of alluded to a little bit. Not like nothing in basketball, nothing in anything is the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everything is snowflake. Everything is unique.
Exactly.
So within the games-based approach and constraints-led approach, variability is very present.
Mm-hmm.
So how important do you think variability is in your training style, and why do you think that's so effective for transfer to actual game?
First off, variability is very, very important in my training, and I'm very cognizant of implementing the right amount because we can make sure we're in that optimal zone improvement again. And again, to get back to the original point of like struggle being important for learning, when we're doing something in block style where it's the same exact thing every time, we kind of just go on autopilot. We don't have to think. We're not struggling. And if we're not struggling, we're not learning. So variability is extremely important because it gives us time to essentially forget what we just learned or what we just did. So each rep becomes a little bit different, and because of that, it implements a little more struggle. And again, when we struggle, we're learning. So it's like really that's all variability is a tool for spacing to allow us to forget, to allow us to struggle. So we have to continue to forget, relearn, and that just strengthens the memory, which strengthens the skill, which helps us transfer over to games.
For sure. And I mean, you're a very science-based guy whenever it comes to training. And I know, obviously, with Cole and Mastery Hoops, you guys do a really good job of meshing the science, skill acquisition with actual training and performance, all this stuff. So a lot of the science says, like, variability. Basically, your brain likes reference points. So with variability, it's like you see one reference in a small-sided game, for example. Now you can go off that reference point and just continue to, like you said, adapt and have, like, not think about it, adapt, break down, build up. It's just this constant reoccurring theme that we're constantly getting better with variable practice. And that's why it's so important for transfer, because we don't get that with block practice. You're not getting, like, you're not challenging yourself cognitively, which is huge. And that's why don't you talk about that a little bit? Like, why do you feel like guys or girls, any players that work on block practice, just from your experience, they only work on block practice, cones, no air, nothing, right? And as soon as they get into the game, it's like they shit their pants. They don't know what's going on. So, like, we know that that's because of variable practice. Like, they don't have enough present. But, like, talk about that and why. I mean, you just talked about variable practice, but, like, talk about that experience with your players.
I mean, I think, number one, like, why players do it is just because you see that initial improvement way quicker.
Right.
But is it really improvement, right? That's the biggest thing is, are we judging improvement based on how we're performing in a workout or in an actual game? Because, first off, it should always be assessed in a game environment because that's what actually matters, not if we can do something in practice. But I think that's just why coaches and trainers and players use it, is because they feel like they're getting better. But then they step into a game like, oh, it's just not translating, and the coach will say, well, you're not going full speed, or you just got to wait a little bit longer, it takes time, and it's like, no, that's not why. It's just we're not practicing the best possible way. So I think it's just getting over that hump and understanding, like, that's just false improvement. Like, we need to do more games-based approach. We need more variability. We need more challenge. And that's why I think a lot of coaches and trainers don't like the variability, is because it doesn't make the player feel as good at first. But again, like, is our goal improvement in practice, making the player feel good, having the parent that's watching be like, oh, like, they're getting better, and then they step into a game that, like you said, they shit their pants. Like, what's the real goal here? And I think if the real goal is game transfer and improvement, then we'll start to use variability more. We'll start to communicate with the players, this is why we're doing this. We'll implement more games-based approach, because that's what actually gets results in a game.
Right, and I think you alluded to it again, like, trainers that don't want to subscribe and understand variable practice, this block practice, like you said, it shows results immediately. So it's like, it's kind of working on their ego too. So it's like, they're seeing results, I'm doing something right. But how are they performing in the game, like you said? So I think it's very ego-driven. I think a lot of the training field, unfortunately, is ego-driven. Like you said, if a parent is watching, I get that that's a difficult situation, because you don't, like, parents don't want to see their kids fail. But also, like, maybe that parent, that family, that kid just isn't good for you. You know what I mean? Maybe you have to take the punch and just be like, all right, I'm not going to work with this kid.
Yeah.
Or just have a real life conversation with the parent and be like, listen, this is how I do things.
Yeah.
If you don't like that, you don't have to work with me.
Yeah.
But you're going to be missing out on results.
Exactly.
So I mean, I think it's, yes, like trainers need money, and I understand you need to show results, but at the same time, just tell them, look, and you guys talk about it in your ebook, Cheap Plug, Master Hoops.
Yeah.
Like we said, learning versus performance. You have to create that, establish that goal.
Yeah.
So like we're gonna be learning here. Results will come, but that's also another thing with variable practice. Like you're gonna look like shit in practice.
Yeah.
But games, you're gonna look really
good.
Exactly. Which, like you said, which one do you want?
Yeah. What do you want?
What do you want? That's the big question. But, like I've mentioned before, your Instagram, your YouTube, all this stuff, creativity is like very present in all your stuff. So where do you think your creativity stems from?
My creativity as a trainer? I like this question because I've actually been trying to think about this more. It's just like, people ask me like, oh, how do you come up with these drills? And like, I don't get how you guys do this stuff. And it's like, it takes time, because I think creativity doesn't come out of thin air. Like, it comes from connecting the dots of a bunch of different things that you understand and know. So it's like, it's taken the time for me to understand the science, to understand the way different sports work, to understand the psychology of the athlete, and connecting all those dots to get to this drill or to this whatever it is that I'm creating, to tap into all that and be ideal. So I'm not creative just for the sake of being creative. I'm being creative. I'm just connecting all the dots to create the best possible environment or drill possible that'll lead to results. So I'm not just like, oh, this like seems like a cool drill, like that'll look cool. It's like, this is a good drill that taps into the science, that taps into the psychology of the athlete, taps into the environment, the motivational aspect, combines all of that, and I just get this. So I think that's where creativity comes from as a trainer and from a player as well. Like, it doesn't come from just being by yourself in a gym and just making shit up. It comes from the knowledge of everything else and connecting all those dots.
Right. I also think it takes some balls too. You know what I mean? To be and it has to take some buy-in from your players. Like, you have already established a relationship like with them, like you said, to try something quote unquote crazy or clown drill or whatever. But like, they know that you have an end goal for that creative drill, whatever it is. I really admire you and Cole and a bunch of other people's creativity, but
appreciate that.
I agree. I think experience, research, just time doing what your craft entails. You know what I mean? Like that, you start to gather some creative juices, and it just all starts to, like you said, the pieces start to come together. Dots start to align. It's dope. I really admire what you do with your creative juices. Do you want to talk about experience as a trainer and how important it is to get as much experience as you possibly can?
I mean, I think for me it's been really important because, number one, like, in today's age, it's easy to get experience. Not easy, but like easy to see a lot of different viewpoints. Yeah. So like back in the day when we didn't have social media or podcasts, or like, you just knew what you knew within your circle and what you could see in like the people you knew. But like today, you can listen to any trainer on a podcast, listen to their philosophy. You can watch exactly how they operate workouts. You can go on their YouTube. So that's, you guys can quote that as like experience, like you're understanding and seeing a bunch of different ways to do things, which for me I think was really important. And I think trying all of those different things, like I tried like Micah's way of doing things, I tried Drew's way of doing things, like I see the way Paul does things, like, and trying to just take what I really like from a scientific perspective of each of those and combining them. But I think in terms of like, and I actually made a video on Master Hoops about this, was like why I don't think it's very beneficial to like intern under one person and like build under one person. So like there's people, man, I respect either way, any way you want to do it, but like there's people who go under Drew and just stay under Drew. Totally fine, like from business perspective, like Drew's a great guy, does really good shit, but it's like I think if you want to get the best results and be the best trainer, try to get under as many people as you can, because you'll see every perspective. Like you'll see the way Drew does things and okay, I really like this, and then go under, see what Micah does and okay, I like that, I'm going to take that and go just check out what this guy's doing. And you just get a lot of different perspectives, and I think if you only see one perspective, you only know things from one angle. So it's like if you can get as much experience from other people, I think that's going to help you craft your own way of doing things, and I don't think that's really the best way to do it, is just being under one person. So like, to your experience point is just get as much experience from as many different people as well.
For sure, I agree. I think, I don't know when it was, but I mentioned this in a video that I posted on Instagram a little while ago, where it's like, at first, when you're first getting into a field, like training, obviously for a good example, like, imitate and then innovate is a great saying.
Exactly.
So like imitate who's doing something really well.
Yeah.
But then as you get better at your craft, like start to innovate that.
Exactly.
Like you said, imitate from different people, pull from different practices, but then create it and make it your own.
Yeah.
But I know you went and interned with Drew.
Yeah.
Drew Hanlon. Like that in-person experience. What like how long was it? 2 weeks at a time?
Yeah, it was 2 weeks. 2 weeks both summers that I did it.
Okay, so how important do you think in person, visually, like being with the players that he's being with, understand like hearing his point of view from business aspect, training aspect, how important do you think that kind of experience is?
Yeah, I think the in person is huge just because you see the little things that obviously don't go on social media or other people don't see. Like you see the way he interacts with players, how he first initially responds to players walking into the gym, how he corrects people, how his body language on everything. So like you see all the subtle aspects that you can't normally see from a social media or just like hearing him talk on a podcast and just seeing the way that those people operate in that setting and seeing the level that they carry themselves at. So it's like that's just stuff you can't see if you're not in person. So that's why I think it's really big to just go out and do things in person. Even if you're losing money on the front end, that experience is going to really pay off in the long run.
The return on investment, right?
Yeah.
Goes crazy. So you're a big reader and a big researcher, and you alluded to like social media and kind of we can almost get more experience nowadays without actually having the quote unquote experience. But since you're a big reader on all these things, for young professionals, do you believe that reading and social media and podcasts and videos, do you think that kind of stuff can bridge the experience gap because I'm 21, you're 23, we're younger guys.
Yeah.
Other people that are in this field younger, do you think that kind of stuff helps bridge that experience gap, genuinely being out in the field?
I would say so. Just because, like, at least from my perspective, like, me interning with Drew is like, I was 19, seeing the way someone who was, I don't know, might have been 30, like, the way a top professional in the field is operating, I'm getting that experience at 19. So it's like, just for like younger people, like especially in the training industry because it's relatively new, like each generation after a certain generation should become better because I'm gaining the knowledge that it took him 10 years to gain and I'm getting it 10 years earlier. And it's like same thing for somebody who's 15 right now who could come and learn from me when I'm 30. It's like you're getting that experience and knowledge younger than I even started. So it's like you already got such a head start. So it's like for us, and especially with the access to social media, we're getting a lot of that knowledge that took them 10 years to get just by listening to a podcast. So it's like, that's why I'm so big on like reading and podcasts is like, you're able to learn someone's entire life work in one book. Like, that's ridiculous. Same thing with a podcast. And like, podcasts are so accessible nowadays, so easy to learn, zero cost entry, it's free. Like, so it's like, you can learn so much at such a young age now because of social media, podcasts, and things like that. So we should be smarter at a younger age than they were because they didn't have that and we're getting their knowledge and experience at, like you said, 19, 20, 21. So it's like we're going to be a couple years ahead, naturally, I feel like.
I agree. I do think that there's obviously, like, you have to apply the things that you learn.
You need the actual, like, training experience. Like, you can't just gain all the knowledge. You need the actual training experience. Absolutely, for sure. For
sure. And I think that was going to be the one thing that I had, like, take the things that you're learning from podcasts, from books, from videos, even if, like, for you, like, if you go out and intern with Drew Hanlon, like, cool, you just learn all that. But now, is it just going to sit and you're going to forget it?
Exactly.
Or as soon as you get back home, you're going to try to apply it.
Knowledge,
And shit, if you apply it, like, if you don't apply it, you won't know if you don't like it or if you do. If you come back and you're like, everything that Drew just did, I'm going to do to a T, maybe you're like, I don't like it quite as much as what I thought I was going to like it. But I do like this, this, and that. And now let me go intern with Tyler Leclerc or Coleman, like whoever it is. Now you piece things together.
Exactly.
But to kind of continue on that question, how did you go about getting an internship with someone like Drew Hanlon? And then to kind of more global, like bigger scale, how have you done such a good job like networking, building your network, and what are some tips for people?
In terms of like the internship is just like social media, like just reaching out, like. And same thing, like, when people reach out to me, they're like, oh, like, I want to learn, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, all right, pull up to the gym. And they show up for one day, and then they're done. It's like, all right, like, I know you're not serious. So it's like, dudes can tell if you're actually serious and actually want to get better for the sake of getting better. Like, I wasn't trying to go and intern just so I can, like, take NBA clients and post fucking pictures with NBA players and say I did this, this, and this. Like, I actually wanted to learn and I didn't really care about all the other stuff. So it's like people can see through that. But yeah, social media was kind of how I did that. In terms of networking, like, I don't even feel like I do a good job of it, but that's one of the things I'm trying to work on. But it's just like social media, like, you can reach out to so many people. Like, I think the biggest thing is people just don't think somebody's going to answer. So it's like, that's what, like, the conference thing is like, oh, how do you organize that? It's like, we just asked. Like, and it's like, we have enough respect to know that people are like, all right, this is going to be legit. Like, if you're a bum on Instagram and you post pictures of your cat every day, like, nobody's going to answer you. But, like, if people can see you're serious and you're genuine, like, you'd be surprised how many people, like, will actually answer, especially in social media, especially if you're respectful and stuff like that. But, yeah, building a network, that's something I'm trying to get better at, but just don't think people are just not going to answer you or just going to say no just because that's what you think. Like, you'd be surprised.
No, I'm a big advocate in shoot your shot, man.
Yeah.
Like, who cares? Like, the worst thing they do is
don't answer, which is exactly the same
what's
spot you're already in.
Yeah, what's the difference? Just a quick shout out since we got the video. I did DM Mike G, and he hasn't gotten back to me. So Mike G, come on the pod, bro. Anyways, I think networking is super big, and I think with the social media aspect now, it's like you said, who cares, bro?
Yeah.
Like, just send out that's how I literally that's how I'm here now.
Yeah.
Because I reached out to you, because I reached out to Coleman, because like you and I have built a relationship now because I reached out and was like, hey, could I mean, the first time I came here, I worked out for you.
Yeah.
You know, or with you.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I paid some money to come here for a session. Now I built a relationship.
Exactly. That's the way it works. Like,
so, like, just who cares, man? Like, just put your ego aside and just send out a DM or whatever.
Yeah.
But, so that was like a good discussion about training and your training style. So you're huge on business, and that's what I admire you.
Yeah.
That's what I kind of think differentiates you from a lot of trainers. You're very open about your business, and kind of like the background of your business. So talk about business a little bit. So from that standpoint, do you want to talk about what are the 3 biggest tips you can give new trainers taking the step to train full time? It doesn't have to be 3. I just said 3.
I mean, I would say, like, number one is consistency. Like, there's so many people that I see that want to do training and they're on and off. Like, they're a trainer for a month and then they're going to do something else and they're focusing their time on that. Like, if you want to be full time, it's really not that hard. Like, it's really not that hard. Like, even if you're charging $50 an hour, like, all you need is 20 sessions a week to make, what would that be, $2,000? Like, $3,000 like, in a week?
To cut you off real quick, genuinely, Mastery Hoops, he has, like, so many videos on this shit. So please go check Mastery Hoops out. If you want to learn more about this from Tyler, please go check that out.
Yeah, like, it's really not that hard to, like, be full time if you take it, like, 100% serious. It doesn't matter where you live. Like, you can live in Kansas, like, middle of nowhere. Like,
Maine.
Yeah, like Maine, exactly. Like, there's obviously there's some places where, like, if you live in Wyoming, it's going to be tough. But, like, if you live in, like, a average area, like, it's relatively easy as long as you're consistent. Like I said, most people are on and off. Number 1, be fucking consistent. Number 2, give yourself a time frame. Like, all right, you want to be full-time? 9 months from now, I'm quitting my job. Like, if you're working a part-time job and training, that's great. Save your money, but give yourself, like, a date. Like, this is the day I'm going to pull the trigger. I think most people just never pull the trigger. I'm comfortable working my job, like, it's working out, and it's like, it's always going to just work out enough because that's all you are required to do. Like, if you need to make $3,000 or $5,000 a month to be full-time as a trainer, and you're splitting your time between a job and training, you're never really required to up your training because you're comfortable, it's working. The second you pull the trigger and quit your job, your training has to increase. Full
attention to that, too.
Exactly. So it's like, number 1, that's a constraint. Number 2, you're burning the boats. You're giving yourself no other option to succeed. That's kind of like what I did. Was like, I was literally had an interview set up to go and be like a personal trainer. It's like make money during the winter when I wasn't training. I was like, fuck that. Like, I'm not going. And I made $900 in January, $900 in February. And I just spent all day, every day, making content and watching film all day. Because I was like, the knowledge I'm going to build now will pay off in the summer.
Fully bought in, right?
Yeah, fully bought in. So I was like, screw it. And I burned the boats. And I think that's like one of my big mentalities with a lot of things is just like, you got to give yourself no other option to succeed. Or else you're always just going to be comfortable. It's just the way, like, human psychology works. Like, if you're comfortable, you're going to keep doing the same shit. So those would be my 2 things. You got to get better at your craft, obviously. That can help you demand higher prices. That can help you make more money and go full-time. So those would be my kind of key points.
For sure, and I think a lot of like stagnant, I guess, people. The reason why people will be stagnant is because training probably doesn't seem like a lucrative business.
Yes, yeah.
But now, like, I genuinely feel like right now is like the most opportune time.
Oh yeah.
To become a trainer.
Easily.
And like you said, like please don't just be a trainer because you played basketball or soccer, whatever the sport is, and just be like, all right, I played, I know that I'm good at it.
Exactly, yeah.
Like do your due diligence, make sure you know your craft, make sure you, because there's so many things that go into training. Like we've touched on a lot of it: communication, building relationships, networking, doing the research scientifically, like making sure things add up. Like there's a lot to go into it, but like just like you said, burn the bridges, tap into what you need to do, and you'll figure it out. Just go 100% in. On
that point is like one thing that I learned early on, which like you said, like why most trainers don't really excel, just like they just have a base level of knowledge. And like my thing that I learned early on is like you can be world class one of two ways: be top 1% in one area, or top 5% in 5 areas. So for training, that's be top 5% in your business knowledge, your training knowledge, your knowledge on basketball, your knowledge on communication. Like so for me, it was like, all right, I'm gonna work on all of those, get really good at them, and then that's gonna make me world class as a trainer. I'm still trying to get there, but when you look at any field, really, that's what you see. Like any business can be lucrative. Like you can make money almost. You see it in today's society. Like there's people who make over 6 figures just posting about them traveling the world. Like
for sure. Like
there's so many goddamn ways to make money, especially like you said in today's world. But you have to have something unique, and you need to have some sort of knowledge. Just playing, you're not gonna be a great trainer. I'm sorry, it's just not gonna happen.
No, I agree 100%, and I like the be top 5% in 5 categories. I like that a lot. But due to time, I will be respectful. We'll finish up with a speed round.
Nice.
I don't know if you looked at them before, but
I think I did, but I forget.
All right, so it's like 5 questions, and then the last question is like not the speed round. So 5 questions, answer as quick as you can, and then elaborate if you want.
Yeah.
So first, who you picking? Better player, John Morant or prime Derrick Rose?
I'd say prime Derrick Rose.
Bro, that's my guy. I was a big Derrick Rose guy. I still am, but prime D Rose.
Prime
is crazy.
D Rose for sure.
All right. If you could wake up tomorrow morning with a new skill gained, doesn't even matter what skill it is, what would it be?
I'd say be really extroverted and great communicator.
Yep.
That's what I'd say.
Hella extrovert, I like it.
Which I wouldn't really say is a skill, but I guess you could kind of categorize it as.
I would categorize it as a skill. I mean, communication is obviously
communication in general, but.
Audio cues or visual cues, from your experience?
I'd say audio cues. If visual cues means like perceptual, like me playing some sort of defense, I'd say that. But if it's just like visual, like point, I'd say audio cues.
Copy that. Do you think you can beat me 1-on-1?
Yes. Didn't need to think about
so
that one.
Quick.
I do remember seeing that one though.
Wow. All right, you just did a little bit of traveling.
Yeah.
Have you been out of the country?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you think the coolest place you've ever been is?
Utah or Ireland?
Utah, Ireland?
Yeah. Utah's dope.
Why Utah?
Just the views are crazy.
Yeah.
Like, it's just completely different than anything you see on the East Coast, obviously. You see a bunch of fucking dirty roads and tall buildings, and trees, pine trees. So I'd say Utah or Ireland.
Dope.
For sure.
All right, so that was the 5 questions. The final question, what is the biggest piece of advice that you'd give yourself 5 years ago?
5 years ago, okay.
Higher solo hoops.
So 5 years ago, I'd be 18, just starting.
Is this senior year of high school or is this freshman year of college?
Senior year of high school.
Okay.
I don't know, because I feel like I've done like I don't know.
There's the whole thing like I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah.
Because that's who you are, but like.
Yeah.
Very broad advice, if there's any. If honestly, if the answer is none, that's cool too.
I mean, I feel like I've done a good job like taking sizable risks, so it's like I wouldn't be like, oh, go big, because I feel like I could go bigger, but I feel like I've gone pretty big in terms of like what I was capable of. I would just say get out there more. Like, I think at first I was not too worried about like making the money, because that was a big focus of mine because I knew I wanted to get a gym and like it takes fucking money to do that. But I'd say get out and like meet more people, and spend more money doing that kind of stuff. Because at first, especially like the first 4 years, up until like the last like 12 months of just like super frugal with my money, not trying to like spend anything that I didn't get like a return on investment on. So I would say that like get out more, meet more people, be more social, I guess, in terms of like networking.
Yeah, no, I like that, and it's funny because Coleman basically said the same
Really?
thing. No, I mean, I don't think necessarily networking, but he was just like have more fun basically.
Yeah.
Because like you two are one and the same as
Yeah.
far as like lock yourself.
Head down, yeah.
Yeah, head down. I'm gonna do this research, like get my job done, which is dope.
Yeah.
But
I think it was necessary.
Yeah.
But I think I would have just added a little bit more, just like meeting more people because I think I could have leveraged those even more. But I got like you said earlier, like I feel like I don't have any regrets or like I wouldn't really change much. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's all I really got for you, bro.
Fire.
If you wanna plug everything, Master Your Hoops, TJL, man,
Yeah.
do
Master Hoops at TJL Training. Look me up on YouTube. That's all I got.
Yeah, and
follow my guy Silva Hoops. Follow my guy here.
Shout out Silva Hoops for the video. Also, if you guys do follow Tyler and Coleman, Master Your Hoops, they got the new conference coming up.
Yes, sir.
April
LA,
2nd and 3rd.
April 2nd, 3rd.
You want to talk about that a little bit before?
Yeah. So I mean, if you're a trainer and you're not there, I mean, I think that says enough. So you better pull up if you're trying to learn and get better. Network. I think that's the best opportunity in the world, at least at this point, for you to do that. So.
Yeah, I mean the first conference there was Paul Favorites, David Williams, Drew Hanley,
everyone.
Obviously Tyler Coleman were there, like Michael Lancaster, all these incredible professionals in the field.
And a lot of good people like who are trainers and that were just watching and observing. Like there was so many people to learn from. It was great.
Yeah, talk about networking. Like that was a great experience.
Yeah.
But all right, man, I appreciate you letting me
Let's
pull up on you. Yeah, all right, guys, peace.